it'll take a second for the YouTube to process. We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the June 8th, 2020 meeting of the University City Council to order. Prior to the clerk calling the roll, I would like to ask all of my colleagues to join in a moment of silence for George Floyd and for his memory. Mr. Floyd was born on October the 14th, 1973 in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and died on May 25th in Minneapolis, Minnesota, after 8 minutes and 46 seconds of a knee being applied to his neck. He has left behind 2 daughters and a granddaughter, and a legacy that we now all own in a way to make our country better. We must do better. We have to do better, and we will do better. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Ms. Reese, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clay.
Present.
Councilmember McMahon.
Here.
Councilmember Hills.
Here.
Councilmember Kusick.
Here.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Here.
Mayor Crowe.
Here, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Mr. Kusick. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you the minutes of the May 26th, 2020 regular meeting of the City Council. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Mr. Kusick, seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Is there discussion, additions, or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We now have a number of nominations, all to the Commission on Stormwater Issues. Seems like we all got religion on that one at the last meeting. Mr. McMahon.
I'd like to nominate Mark Holly to the Commission on Stormwater Issues.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hales. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Hales.
I'd like to nominate Eric Stein to the Commission on Stormwater Issues.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kusick. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Smotherson.
I'd like to nominate John Tiemann to the Commission on Stormwater Issues.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McMahon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Clay.
Yes, my nomination for the Commission on Stormwater Issues is Eric Karch.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I would like to nominate Todd Thompson to the Commission on Stormwater Issues. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. To all of the citizens who are watching, thank you very much for participating. We recognize again the challenges that this format presents to everyone. We appreciate the comments that were received by Ms. Reese, our city clerk, prior to noon today. And as we continue to work under these protocols, please do know that anytime you send in comments, they need to be into us prior to noon of the meeting day. and signed with your, with your name and address. So those that meet that qualification will be put into the record for tonight's meeting. We now have before us the public hearing on the operating budget. I declare the public hearing open as of 6:35 p.m. And Ms. Reese, I presume that we have no comments that were made ahead of time for the public hearing. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. The public hearing for the annual operating budget and CIP will be closed as of 6:35 p.m. And to the city manager and to the city attorney, this is the first time I think I've done that. Are we good? Is that the appropriate protocol?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Rose, the city manager's report.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this first item requests authorization to purchase 2 Dodge Durango SUVs for a total amount of $65,710 with an award to Bellman Chrysler Dodge. The bid was conducted by the state, and so we are pulling this from the statewide bid. I, as well as Chief Hampton, is here to respond to any questions that you might have.
Is there a motion to purchase the Dodge Durango police vehicles? Motion made by Mr. Hales, seconded by Mr. Kusick. As Mr. Rose indicated, are there any questions that you'd like to ask of either Mr. Rose or Chief Hampton at this time? Mr. Kusick.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering, will these be replacing existing vehicles? But more importantly, how does this put the police fleet now in terms of, will there be more vehicles that will have to be purchased in the near future? Or does this put you in pretty good position now for the vehicular needs for the department?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Kusick, I'll defer to Chief Hampton on this question.
Yeah, Councilmember, this will be replacing 2 vehicles. So it's not like we're going up on 2 more vehicles. It's actually 2 vehicles that will be rotated out, a 2013 and a 2015 vehicle that has extensive damage and stuff to it. So this will be upgrading that, and this is a very good price as well. So.
Good, thank you.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Kusick, I would also add to Chief Hampton's statement that we have an annual replacement program. I believe that Chief is allocating, as you will see in this budget, our proposed budget, requesting about $140,000 annually to ensure that the fleet remains in a good position.
Good, glad to hear that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Hales.
Not a question. I just wanted to thank the city manager and Chief Hampton. I had a couple of questions on this item, and the chief called me today, and we discussed it and answered all of those questions. So I'm kind of a car guy, but I appreciate both of their time and effort to answer those questions for me. Thank you.
Mr. Clay, did you have a question?
No, I did not. I'm sorry. I may have indicated, but I have not.
Anything further? Hearing nothing further. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item, we were asked to present to you the current policies and procedures that we have and how those policies and procedures, policing policies and procedures, align with 21st century policing as developed under the Obama administration, that report. What we will present to you tonight, and Chief Hampton will be the main speaker on this, is how those things align and take input from you as it relates to whether we should modify these policies, whether you believe that they are aligned as they should, or generally what direction we should be going in. We certainly try to ensure that those policies and procedures are consistent with the values of the mayor and council and also the values of the community. So with that said, I will turn things over to Chief Hampton. Chief?
Good afternoon, everyone. I saw several requests reference the policies or the points that were mentioned by former President Obama. 8 points, I believe, referring back to his 6 pillars, and some of those 6 pillars within his 21st Century Police Task Force report. I can assure you and guarantee you that all of those pillars are addressed within our general orders of policies for the police department, meaning all of those points will be addressed within those pillars, whether that's dealing with the force continuum, whether that's dealing with the fact that we do not allow chokeholds, whether that's dealing with the fact that anytime that an officer removes a weapon and points a weapon at someone, that is a use of force document. That does not go undocumented. All of such, some of these questions, I can go down the list. Requirement to de-escalate when possible. We have several policies that satisfy that and encompass that point that was made by President Obama. Whether that's the use of force policy, whether that's our police discretion and authority policy, whether that's our code of ethics policy, whether that's our disciplinary and code of conduct policy, as well as our training policy. The de-escalation training is ongoing. It is always occurring, whether it's in the academy as a new recruit, with your role plays and your verbal judo lessoning that you obtain within the academy. You also obtain that during continuing education, which is required through the state of Missouri post police officer standards training mechanism, meaning that each officer has to have a certain level of training each year documented, or else they can lose their commission status. Going to the next point, ban chokeholds and strongholds. That is not allowed chokehold, not an allowed hold or detainment or containment move by University City Police Department. Use of force policy 3-01 covers that. Also 3-15 disciplinary code of conduct policy. Now, understanding that the force continuum is a very extensive, starting with command presence, your mere presence, meaning don't be an officer with your hands in your pocket, unattentive, not paying attention to people moving about when you're on a domestic violence call, when you're on a bank robbery report call, and you're verifying whether or not this is a legitimate call. You're legitimizing the call. Be ready, have that command presence, get ready to give the verbal commands that need to be done. And I'm just working myself down the force continuum all the way down to a soft, empty hand control. At no points in our force continuum does it says a chokehold or a sleeper hold or any such wrestling hold would be allowed. We have pressure points, and that is nowhere near providing a grab or a grapple or a hold. The holds that we're taught in the police academies here in the St. Louis metropolitan area, along with the state of Missouri, mainly deals with the arm grabbing and trying to control a subject for containment. For arrest, a containment must be made. You cannot effect an arrest when you have a passively aggressive a person that you're dealing with is moving about, because you're putting other people in danger, not only yourself, but it could be the victim that this perpetrator or suspect has victimized. Moving on to the third point, requirement for officers to report or intervene when witnessing excessive force. That's covered in several of our policies as well. 3-09, direction, authority and responsibility. Disciplinary and code of conduct, as well as 4-03 compliance reporting, meaning that an officer is a terminatable offense to report something falsely. That's actually a crime. You cannot report, not only as a police officer, but in general, as a false report to the police is documented, and that should be followed up and investigated as need be. Meaning that officers are duty bound to report. We're mandated reporters, whether that's dealing with juveniles and child abuse, domestic violence, whether that's dealing with an officer being overly aggressive. All of that is mandated to the point where not only in our policy, but you have to report that. here in the state of Missouri and here at University City for sure. Number 4, before shooting at a suspect, these are just, I think, some of the concerns that I pulled away from the email that I'm just addressing. Before shooting at a suspect, an officer will identify him or herself as an officer and state his or her intent to shoot whenever possible. That's our use of force policy. You cannot go from 0 to the end of the force continuum without those directives, without those voice commands, without those commands advising who you are, what you're there to do, and what this is about. So meaning if we go to a bank robbery, we've had this before at a Commerce Bank where we responded to Commerce Bank and immediately a suspect exits the bank and shoots at us. Now, of course, that's a jump up the force continuum to a different level. Now, at that point, it's not about announcing and understanding that, let me tell this person who I am. He just shot at the police car. He just shot at me, or whatever the case is. So yes, in circumstances such as that will jump to a force continuum. But in circumstances where you're dealing with pedestrians, car checks, where you're stopping people to ask questions, none of this should be elevated that fast. And if it is, any use of force policy, any use of force incident is documented. It's documented and it's put in our annual reports as well. And any violations is addressed immediately. Meaning if a person maybe had a arm hold improperly administered, that's addressed. And whether that's retraining, whether that's counseling, whether that's progressive discipline, all of that is addressed immediately, not in a long length of time. It says shooting at moving vehicles or suspects in vehicles, an officer will not discharge a firearm at or from a moving vehicle, nor at a suspect in a moving vehicle. Within our use of force, you have to have a very delicate amount of information to be pursuing a felon anyway, meaning a serious deadly felon that may have someone that just shot at the hypothetically shot at our mayor at a speech event, and we see this person get in the car, and now this person is not only in the car and fleeing from us, but now he or she is shooting at us as we try to pursue that person to obtain that person in custody. That elevates to the point where if a person is adequately trained, and we get annual firearms training annually, not only through St. Louis County, but in-house as well. If you have a shot to take down a dangerous suspect that may potentially harm someone else, you have to take that shot at that point. Now, that's not a gamble, but because you have to weigh the risks with the rewards, you have to reassess every pursuit, every following up of the incident immediately. And it's not only you reassessing it, it's the watch commander and the supervisor having to reassess that to make sure. And that's one reason we're in compliance with Slate and Daniel and Henry, is because of our policies like that. We do not have a real loose pursuit policy in general. So that covers the shooting at moving vehicles as well. Requirement to report when they point a firearm at a civilian unless it discharges. Yes, we do report, and it is documented, and this documentation goes to the state of Missouri as well. It also goes in our annual report that we submit to the city. And I can tell you that if there are any incidents to where a person, we haven't had any formal complaints within the last 3 years of any that we have documented at all, that any person was illy mistreated. Now you're going to always get the person that say, I shouldn't have been placed in handcuffs. I shouldn't have been arrested. But yeah, you had a warrant. You had an ordinance violation. A crime was just committed. That's a disagreement. Yes, at that point we had a reason to arrest you. If we don't have a reason to arrest you, we're not going to arrest you, and we're not going to detain you, and we're not going to contain you. Meaning we're not going to put our hands on you. As soon as we put our hands on you, there's documentation. There's a report. There's follow-up investigation going at that point. Requirement to report when they pointed. Sorry about that. Deadly force will be a last resort and will only be exercised when all reasonable alternatives have been exhausted or appear impractical. Yes, that's what the force continuum covers. I mean, we want to talk someone out of any incident. We want to use our verbal judo, our communication skills, our training that we learn. We want to use our de-escalation skill, because the de-escalation is the word that has just recently come about. We use it as other things. Let's be a problem solver. Let's not be a problem causer. Let's make sure that we're getting down to the root of the basis. We've had to wear many hats, whether that's being a social worker, counselor, law enforcer, enforcement of security, whatever the case is. Just a point of giving an example of when regional hospital down on Delmar closed down. A lot of mental patients used to be transported there, even mental patients from the Delmar Loop that would that clearly needed help. They were not a criminal element, and now that the state has closed that down, that help is gone away. We have to use other resources, other elements, whether St. Vincent's, whether it's St. Louis County Mental Health Court, whatever the case is. It's not something that we don't get training in, because we do get training. That's what the CIT pins are worn on the officer's shirt. That's crisis intervention training. So dealing with a sick person, dealing with a person that has an episode, we have to recognize that, and what are the resources that we have to give to that. And that's what we do. That's what we try to do. And then lastly, it mentions the use of force continuum. That's clearly in our 3-01 use of force continuum, and it clearly breaks down all of our use of forces, like I say, pressure points, verbal judo, on down to the deadly force. And using the deadly force, that is a very last resort, the very last resort to save not only your life or someone else's life, anyone's life that may be in harm at that point. I think that's all I have on those 8 points right there.
Motherson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Crow. Chief, again, thank you for being here tonight. And just always wanted to say I appreciate you and the University City Police Department. But, one of the things that I didn't hear, and I definitely want to have addressed, and that's part of the reason why I'm glad I had you here tonight, is so that you can kind of reassure the public and the U City citizens what our policies are. But what I wanted to ask is this, specifically, two things that stand out to me with the George Floyd incident that I didn't hear you specifically mention. And I know there are different aspects about this, but two I wanted to ask about is, and our policy with the knee, our policy compared to the actions that were taken that night with the knee and the neck. How does our policy compare to what we saw and the actions that were taken by those police officers is the one question that I wanted to address. The second is, the other thing that stood out to me is, what's our policy on duty to intervene? If you could answer that, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember. We are not taught, we're not trained. I've never been trained, and no one in the academy now. I have 3 recruits in the academy now. No one is trained to use a knee to a neck. That is something that they were trained in Minnesota. That is something that are trained in some other states, and I'm assuming they're going to be looking at reforming that. I can't speak on that particular incident, but I do know that in past that they were taught stuff like that to try to render someone unconscious or something like that I've read. No, we've never been taught a technique to that point to even sit on someone, let alone put a knee to a neck to contain them. And literally, when you have containment with 3 officers, the containment should have been fairly easy at that point to possibly get this person detained and moved off the street and maybe into a vehicle at that point. And the last thing, the duty to intervene, I did cover that reference. Requirement for officers to report or intervene when witnessing excessive forces. As we have several policies with that. 3-09, that's the direction and authority and responsibility that the officer in University City is given. 3-15, disciplinary / code of conduct of an officer, meaning that it's unbecoming of an officer. If I go down to code of conduct, it is the policy of the University City Police Department to establish and reinforce code of conduct with the department through our fair standards of discipline to all members. Now, what I will say on that, some of our policies are closely aligned with our administrative regulations, and that is under compliance reporting number. Let me look at this. Compliance reporting with 4-03 is also Administrative Regulation 43, reporting suspicious activities and response to report. Not only is a code of conduct, not only is that a violation of your code of conduct of standing by watching overly excessive force, but it's also failed to report that information right away, meaning we're at the scene, on duty, to your supervisor, over the radio, whatever the case is, to get that stop if he or she will not listen to you, or you cannot move that person off of the person. We teach our officers here in University City, as well as some other communities, but here in University City, roll call briefings are very extensive, whether that's a 15 to 30 minute period every day, about when officers may need to step in. If you see incorrect information being given, if you see excessive force being given, you need to step in. We don't have that issue, we do not have that problem here in University City.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Clay.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thank you so much for your presentation. I want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Smotherson, for bringing this forward. And I certainly know the remainder of my council colleagues were really eager to have you present. So again, thank you. Had a couple of questions. Can you give us some information on use of force complaints that we've had recently? Has that been an issue in University City?
That has not been an issue in University City. Within our reports, we will break down not only the use of force, but it'll say use of force incidents, empty hand control, takedowns. Takedown is simply, let's take a person down to detain him at that point. Not taking him down by his feet, ankles, or whatever, or neck, or anything of such, arms, legs. Let's take a person down, almost like a judo type of move. Pepper spray, weapon displayed, meaning that if we have to point a weapon at you, not just pull a weapon from a holster. Pulling a weapon from a holster, we're taught to go to a low ready maneuver, to meaning that it's safe and we're investigating a suspicious call, whether it's a middle of the night and it's an alarm sounding behind a large property that we have to clear to make sure there's not an actual break-in in the middle of the night. Whether it's dealing with our ASP or collapsible baton. I can tell you those collapsible batons are a lot smaller than when they were when I came on. They were called broomsticks back when I initially started my career here, and a lot smaller, lot more compact, and also tasers. Now we also have tasers out there. These are all less lethal options than any of the deadly force of dealing with the weapon. The only one within that use of force person or particular is dealing with whether we discharge a weapon. If we discharge a weapon, then we're intending to use deadly force. We're not intending to send warning shots or what have you. Also, pointing a weapon at someone is a use of force, whether you intend to shoot it or not, or you intend to give directives and commands to de-escalate the situation. Say a person is pointing a weapon back at you, or a person is pointing a weapon at a loved one. Murder, suicide, that happens quite often, to where you come into a home where you have a barricaded subject. Well, you can't just leave these victims along with this barricaded subject, because at that point, especially if we have contact with them, of course we try the negotiations and what have you. But yes, use of force and the different styles of use of forces are documented, not only in our annual report. Mm-hmm.
And so I think most of the reporting that we get from you is on a 3-year basis. So in the past 3 years, how many use of force complaints have there been?
I'm looking for 2019. We had 45 use of forces, and that 45.
No complaint. Have there been any complaints?
Oh, no, there's no
Okay.
formal complaints. Like I said, the
Okay.
formal complaints are the complaints you get are a person, oh, y'all shouldn't put these handcuffs on me, or I'm a move around because I don't want to go back to jail for my probation
Okay.
violation. Or none of such.
Okay. Okay. And my second kind of part of my question is, while we know George Floyd was an adult, my question is going to be geared more towards some of the youth programs that we're involved in. Can you touch a little bit on those?
Right.
When we're dealing with young people who may be making some poor decisions, what are the things we try to do to keep them out of the system, not get them caught up in the formal criminal justice system anyway?
Right. UCPD has tremendous success with our community engagement programs and our community events, whether that is our juvenile diversion programs. We have 2 of those going right now. One is still in limbo right now because of the COVID situation, but the JCC, which is a juvenile committee conference, I have some school resource officers on that committee, as well as one of our chaplains. So they hear those cases, and these are juveniles and juvenile offenders and kids that we're not trying to send through the juvenile detention program, meaning that we're trying to provide clear alternatives other than juvenile detention and punishment. And so we utilize these resources, whether it's Beyond Housing, whether it's Better Family Life, whether it's St. Vincent's, whatever the case is, whatever resource will fit that family and that juvenile, that's what we try to steer to. The second program for juvenile diversion is a juvenile diversion program for first-time offenders from ages 9 to 16. 9 to 16, moving up to 17 very soon, is dealing with person that's doing a shoplifting, a trespassing, a graffiti. We're not trying to do a pipeline to prison. So that's why we're making sure that not only are we doing these juvenile programs with the St. Louis Family Court, this is in conjunction with, we're the first program for this 9 to 16 age group. We're the first jurisdiction for that, even within St. Louis County. Not only are we dealing with the family court, but we also have the restorative justice initiatives that we help out with the University City School District, also trying to give alternatives other than the pipeline to prison terminology that people think it is. There's no, at any cost, if a person can be diverted from a detention situation to avoid the percentages moving up for that juvenile to stay within a criminal system, then we want to provide that, and we're going to be here to provide that. And a lot of that we cover even within our citizens police academies to the citizens that come through that information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions from my colleagues? One question I have, Chief, and it's a little off the list that it was not on the list, but I think it's something that probably touches upon a number of those issues, is how often do we have diversity training for our line officers?
That is yearly, Honorable Mayor. That is a yearly training, and whether that's in class, whether that is in person, whether that's something that we do in seminars or conferences, we get that accomplished. That is that's not only a requirement for your post-annual training for Missouri, but that is a requirement for in-house that we try to far surpass the minimum requirements of that.
Mayor,
Mr. Rose.
just wanted to make sure I cleared up one issue. Chief, I believe that the use of lethal force is only executed for the protection of persons. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Not for property, only for persons. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hales.
Thank you. I think it's been right about 2 weeks that I called the city manager after Mr. Floyd was killed, and the concern I had was we can't possibly do this. I mean, it was just horrific. And so I really do appreciate the city manager's time and the chief's time. I know he got involved and then sent this. We talked a lot about the force continuum. We got to see that. And I really appreciate both council members Clay and Smotherson for asking that this be something that we get to discuss tonight. That said, it's incredibly sad that we're having this discussion. The chief talked a lot about, and the chief and I talked today, and in addition to talking about the police vehicle purchase, we talked actually probably at about the same length as this, I think. We talked a lot about the force continuum and escalation. You talked a bit about de-escalation. This is sort of a follow-up, I think, on the mayor's comment. Can you talk just a little bit more? And I just want to share with the rest of council and everybody who's watching. I shared with the chief this afternoon an experience that I had witnessing a confrontation with members of our police department, and it was a difficult situation with somebody who was very upset and angry, and I think angry at family, angry at the world, and angry at the police. And what I saw witnessing this was just incredible patience. And I think the chief said one of their roles is as a social worker, and that is what I saw from our police, and that's why to me it was just shocking to see what has taken place, not just in Minneapolis, but in other places throughout the country. So, Chief, could you just expound a little bit more on the de-escalation and that training, because I think that is so important here.
Well, let me start, Councilmember. Let me start with the force continuum itself, and I'll give you examples of this. When you first walk into the room, that is your officer presence. The very next thing is your voice and your request. What are you requesting of the personnel that is in the room? Now, if it's to the point past the request, now it's a command. This is your command. This is number 3 on the force continuum. Going then to the 4, okay, the commands are being ignored. You're having soft, empty hand control, non-paying compliance guidance, meaning when you have to softly escort someone, soft, empty hand control, non-paying compliance guidance, escorting subject holding an arm or a wrist. Subject is not resisting. Number 5, pressure points, paying compliance such as PPCT, pressure points that you're taught within your academy, and this is still taught within the St. Louis County Academy. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. I was talking about what I witnessed was there was no contact. There could have been. I could have seen that go. Certainly with what we've seen on the news, I could have seen that go a totally different direction. But these officers talked this individual down, calmed him down. To the point where they, as I said today, like they sort of collectively figured out where he could go and stay the night and got it sorted out. And it could have gone very much the other way. But what you talked about, I think it was crisis training.
Crisis intervention training.
Right.
That is, you're taught that in the academy, but even outside of the academy, that's a 40-hour training. So literally I lose an officer for an entire week to maintain that access, maintain that commission of that status of crisis intervention training that deals with not only mental health, but it also deals with stress, anxiety, deals with breakdowns, bipolar, schizophrenia, and you're taught to identify the different methods. In general, sometimes people they're talking to themselves and they're really not at harm. Meaning they're not at harm to anyone else, but you understand that the person is having an episode. And literally taking in consideration, like say a soft empty hand control. At this point, when you're getting compliance, you may drop back down the force continuum, back down to your request, back down to your presence. That doesn't mean once you start the force continuum that it keeps escalating up. De-escalating down is always the goal. Problem solving, making sure that the people are getting the resources and the tools available. It's very difficult for a police officer to sign in a mental health patient that is having an episode, i.e., unless they are actually making threats to the public or threats to themselves, meaning we have to track down family members, and we do. And we don't just leave a broken person standing on the side dealing with an episode on their own. We don't drive away. So that de-escalation deals with the entire gambit of problem solving, and that training is extensive. I'm sure there's going to be many more vendors getting into that role now. You know, whether it's by way of online training or by way of more training here in St. Louis once they fully open it all the way up. Right now, there's a very limited amount that they allow in the police academies themselves because of the COVID issue. But in general, before that, tons of people being trained and what have you. And these requirements are sent on a yearly basis up to Missouri Post, which is in Jefferson City. And they send us with our compliance letters every year, you know, in understanding that aspect of it. So yes, the de-escalation training is one of the things that we're most proud of. We get that in a variety, whether it's dealing with racial diversity training, whether it's dealing in crisis intervention training. There's even advanced crisis intervention, meaning that now we're taking it to the level to where you're a supervisor or you're an instructor in-house, and I have several of those here in University City, to where not only we do in-house training to make sure that everybody is fully on the same page, but to make sure that everybody's skills stay honed and toned up.
Questions?
Well,
Mr. Smotherson.
I just wanted to, if no one else has any questions, I kind of wanted to change the page and actually ask the chief a general question, more so about the state of University City. And my question is there any concerns that you may have and or your officers may have about anything in University City, especially since, you know, now that, I mean, the kids aren't in school, there are no athletic programs going on, we're dealing with COVID-19, and you know, the swimming pool's not open, the gym's not open. Are there any concerns or anything that you can tell the council? Anything we can help you with? I know we can't go out on the street with you, but I'm just saying, you know, in our capacity, anything that you may want to pass on to us.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Councilman. You know, the concerns are always, it's a fluid situation that we're dealing with. It's a very delicate situation. We don't know when and where things are going to open up. We're hearing dates of colleges. We're hearing dates of potential high school. I just talked to someone today about the high school's plan reference their graduation. Near the circle in the high school, again, still practicing the social distancing, as well as keeping the kids satisfied to get it. I think it's 150 students that they have that are planning to graduate. But literally, yes, keeping these kids occupied. There was a couple things that were going on this summer that we were going to be involved with. Not only the St. Louis PAL, Police Athletic League classes that we teach during the school year, and they reward these kids with different trips each Friday, whether it's Six Flags, whether it's a museum, whether it's somewhere in Tennessee, whatever the case is. And these are communities like University City in St. Louis County, Normandy, Hazelwood, Jennings, anything of such to reach the kids that are in need and need these activities. Also a camp through St. Louis County and Missouri Highway Patrol called CAPLE, C-A-P-L-E, CAPLE, C-A-P-L-E. And literally this is dealing with kids getting away, adventuring into a outdoors activity on a weekend basis, on a once a week basis for like maybe 5-6 weeks. Me and Dr. Harden, the superintendent of the school district, had this conversation. This was probably a month and a half ago now that we discussed the plans on this, and hoping that by this time it opened up and what have you. So it's not really any concerns. It is, like I said, I think the testing of the foundation of parenting is in place at this point. So us making sure that parents are going to be providing a good atmosphere for the kids, and us being a good atmosphere for them as well, a safe house for them as well. But in general, the activities, the community engagement is limited at this point, and we're ready for it to open up. And once it opens up, we're full go. I mean, I just had a Noble board. I'm a Noble board member, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. And literally we're talking about other activities as well as that. And those activities I'm trying to bring to University City to encompass our community with that. And activities such as this past Christmas and holiday, even in January, we provided families, at least 10 to 15 families here in University City, movie tickets and gift cards for refreshments for the kids to go to the Galleria's movie theater. I think that was something a little innovative, as opposed to just toys for tots, as opposed to backpacks for the kids and school supplies. That was something that and so those type of programs are going to continue, and we're going to continue to try to be innovative with our community members. And that especially includes the children.
Okay, thank you.
Honorable Mayor, if I could, I'd like to add on to what Chief Hampton has stated in response to Councilmember Smotherson's question. I think that any actions that the mayor and council can take to encourage our federal and state, as well as the county delegation, our representatives, to provide more funding for social service programs that would prevent domestic violence, programs that better address mental health, programs that fund greater levels of education, especially for those that are least fortunate. I think those are the types of actions that, if you want to have a major impact, not just on our community, but society as a whole, those are the areas where I think that our investment would bode well.
Thank you very much. A couple of things I would say as I think we'll move on to the next topic is I'm very pleased and I'm glad that this became a part of our agenda for the evening. And I think probably as I watched my colleagues' faces as the chief made his report, I think we're very pleased with where we are. I also would say that I think this is also that moment in time when we probably don't sit back and feel that good about how good we are, but that is there someplace else that we need to tighten up? And I'm not sure where we are yet on that. I leave that to the chief. I leave that to the city manager. I think what we have seen across the country has shown us that there's always room for improvement someplace. And while we are doing a great job, I think the question we owe it to ourselves to ask is there something we need to tighten up or something that we need to be doing better? And clearly by the city manager's comments, that includes us trying to get funding from probably what has been and will probably continue to be a recalcitrant legislature on many of those expenditures. Probably will try our patience as well. So Chief, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for the good work that you and all of our officers are doing every day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
And I'm sure we'll probably have some comments towards the end of the meeting as well, probably regarding probably national events. So I'm sure that there'll be more to come. We'll now move, if we can, to unfinished business. Under unfinished business, we have bill number 9406. May we have the second reading, Ms. Reese?
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a contract between the city, University City, and the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission, providing for the Canton Avenue Improvement Project.
May we have the third reading?
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a contract between the city of University City and the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission, providing for the Canton Avenue Improvement Project.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? I know that I believe Mr. Rose has seen on here as well. I believe Mr. Clay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Crow. Could you talk a little bit about who's doing the work and the protocol we have in place to monitor that that work that's taking place? As we know, this council has addressed issues of poor contractor work in the past. Oftentimes it is taken months, in some cases years, to remediate that poor work. So what are we doing to get on top of this to make sure that ideally there are, but if there are issues, that they are remediated quickly?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clay, I would ask for CNON to provide information on what our current structure is, especially highlighting the role of the project manager, which is something that is new to the organization. So I'll turn that question over to Mr. Appleston.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Councilmember Clay, our protocol in these projects is the project manager is primarily responsible for all project activities. That includes the contractual activities. The contractor, as well as when the job first starts, is the design contract first with an engineering firm to do that complete that part of the project. On this particular project, we have a proposed $72,000 engineering design contract for that purpose. It's also 80% reimbursed by the federal government. And once the job starts, that design professional, the firm brings the job up to, under the project manager's supervision, brings the job up to the completion of the construction contract bidding. And once that is completed, so during that time, the design professional uses their design capability, their professional engineers, to complete the design on the project, pass it through the Department of Transportation's examination, and bids this project. And once the bids are obtained, then this firm evaluates the bids and recommends a selection of a contractor to the project manager. Project manager reviews this and then proposes that along with, together with me, to our city manager, that is for our council's approval. Once that is all completed, then we switch to the construction phase. During the construction phase, generally, the same engineering firm is retained for construction inspection services on the project. And so this is similar to the recently completed Ackard Walkway Improvements Project, as well as the Forsyth Boulevard Improvements Project. And during the construction phase, the design firm becomes a construction engineering firm, and they provide daily inspections of the job site, coordination of the work progress with the project manager, as well as pay applications review and advice on their approval to the project manager. It is ultimately the project manager's responsibility to approve or disapprove the work and make comments about input about how the schedule is maintained on the job, as well as work quality, like you described. And with the help of the engineering firm in construction inspections, we then bring the project up to construction substantial completion and on schedule, and with the work quality as specified. And at that point, the engineering firm continues assisting our project manager with the approval of a semi-final inspection on the job, and then submitting those results to the Department of Transportation again for their approval and release of the reimbursement of our monies. And from there, we proceed to the construction closeout, where this firm is again assisting us. However, in some jobs, the percentage of cost that goes into those services is less than others. So on some jobs, we have more of the hard construction, tangible construction cost, and less of the advice, the construction engineering advice, construction inspections advice from the firm. So in those cases, which applies to all the cases in our work, the project manager has the ultimate responsibility to follow up on the work, approve, disapprove the work, coordinate the work with our adjacent residences, incorporate their comments and their concerns into the project and build it according to that.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Mr. Alpasan. And so let me ask this to break it down just a little bit further. You know, what I hear constituents and frankly, what I've seen on my own street is the construction is happening. I don't know if in the past there's been a protocol that someone is inspecting the construction as it happens, because once it's kind of all sealed up, it's done, and you don't really know what's going on underneath until it fails. And so is it my understanding that our project manager will be inspecting the actual construction work, not necessarily the design, although that's important, the actual construction work along the way, making sure that it is as it needs to be? And if you have, I would imagine, enough inspections along the way, you're not as concerned about the final product because you know what it has looked like throughout the process. So is what I'm saying correct?
Correct. The construction inspections consultant is also responsible for keeping daily records of the work, as well as testing quality assurance of the work. And so these firms most often have that in-house, and so they can test concrete, they can test asphalt, they can test backfill, compaction, and so they are responsible for documenting those results and submitting them on a daily basis to the project manager. And the project manager is responsible for keeping those records and ensuring that the project construction is according to the specifications. As we proceed, like you described, unearthing already completed work is not easy for anybody. And so we need to do that when the work is in progress, address any issues before it's backfilled, before it's covered, before it's sealed, so that it's a more effective process for all parties involved.
Sina, can you share, this is a new position that was approved by the mayor and council, and how long has it been filled now?
Correct. The construction project manager was hired in January of this year. And Gene Kelker has been working in that capacity. And he is a professional engineer with years of experience from City of St. Louis, previous municipal experience. And some of that was spent in the Lambert Airport expansion job, quite involved construction activities. And so Gene is available even when he's not the project manager on a job. He is available for supporting the project manager's activities in the field for those inspections and keeping an eye on the job, as well as keeping an eye on the construction inspection firms' activities that they complete.
Mayor and Councilmember Clay, I just want to illustrate that what had happened in the past, we identified a weakness in our system. And you and the rest of your colleagues approved the position so that we could strengthen that. So we should not have the issue of, which is basically shoddy workmanship going forward, because we have greater oversight.
Mr. Kusick?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is kind of twofold. Sinan, you mentioned a construction inspection consultant and a construction project manager. Construction project manager is a University City employee, correct?
Correct.
So that is our oversight on the project, and he or she is inspecting the project as it proceeds. So I'm just concerned that we have oversight, because if you have outside agencies, who do they really report to? And are they really reporting what they need to report in terms of making sure that a project like this is being done properly? So you do have direct supervision over the construction project manager, and that is our own oversight, correct?
Correct. And the construction project manager assembles all the information together, the data that comes from the field, the data that comes from the engineering firm that is doing that work, as well as testing results, and documents all that and makes the ultimate decision as for the approval of the work.
And just a follow-up question to that, how often does the construction project manager actually visit the locations where those projects are taking and physically examines what's been going on?
Daily.
Good, glad to hear that, thank you.
Any other questions regarding bill number 9406? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hills,
Aye.
Councilmember Kusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. Thank you very much. Let's now move on to council reports and businesses. Are there any items to be brought forward under this section of the agenda by members of council?
I just have one quick one.
Okay. Mr. Hales?
We do have an open position on the traffic commission. The commission has been a little bit out of whack in terms of representation across the ward, so as well as gender. So we ideally are needing and wanting someone from Ward 3, and also we could use another woman on the commission as well. So if any of you know anyone who would be interested in that, that would be a big help.
Okay. Hearing nothing otherwise under this section of the agenda, council comments prior to moving into closed session. Are there comments that members of council would like to make at this time? Nope, no comments. Okay, Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I just wanted to thank our residents for coming out for the municipal election. There wasn't much on the ballot. There's one contested race in the second ward, and congratulations to Alita Klein, but also thank you to Gerald Tiers for his efforts and running and being involved, but also to our residents, whether by absentee vote because of what we're facing or showing up to the polls that day. There was still a pretty good turnout for a municipal election. So I was happy to see that people participated even when there wasn't much going on except one contested race in the second ward. Congratulations to Jeff Hales and Wayne Smotherson for their re-elections in uncontested races, and glad they're here. I'd also like to congratulate coming up, this would be next Monday during the study session, the class of 2020, as the chief kind of mentioned, that's when they're going to have their drive-by graduation ceremony. So I'll miss the study session because I'll be driving by that night with my daughter graduating from University City High School that night. Unless it rains, then I'll be here. So I'd like to thank that. And I'd just like to thank all of our residents as well that participated in the things that are going on in our community. It's really moving to see people in large numbers standing up for what they believe in, protesting, being involved, making people aware of the things that are going on in our world and how we need to change for the better, all the way down to small things that are just as moving. People showing up down on the Delmar Loop, painting the boarded up stores. It may not sound like much, but it's something they don't have to do, but they do it because they're involved in their community. And it's really moving to see that people are engaged to the level they are in University City, and it really makes me proud to be here. So thank you for all that.
Mr. Hales.
Thank you. To follow up on Steve's comments, I have had the opportunity. I certainly, I'm not in a very good condition. The council knows about this, but I certainly could not walk with some of the protesters. But I did have the opportunity to see them as they went by, and I was absolutely thrilled to see how many of my friends and neighbors I saw walking by. And to follow that up, and I, as a compliment to Chief Hampton, we all got an email tonight from someone, a pastor who was a participant in that, who thanked Chief Hampton and all of our police officers for all of the assistance that they gave, how helpful they were, and it was such a nice thing to see. But I think that email is such a testament to the what Chief Hampton talked about and the goals and the efforts of our department to do the right thing and to I just, as Steve said, I could not be more proud of our citizens who have gotten involved. Everyone right now, it's just it's terrific. That said, I had not said anything publicly about the election. This was one of the strangest elections I think I've ever seen with the delay, and but I do want to thank everyone who came out in the 3rd Ward. I was completely blown away. I had a campaign kickoff party, and that was it. I was going to send a mail piece, but I don't want to receive mail that I don't need. So it was incredibly heartening to see over 1,000 people come to vote when it was basically St. Louis Community College and me, and they didn't have to vote for me. So thank you very much to the voters. It was very heartening.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hales moved again.
I think he did. I think he did. He said 3rd Ward.
3rd Ward, 3rd Ward.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I missed that. First ward. Clearly.
Yeah. Anyone else? Mr. Clay.
Oh, is this? I'm sorry, I lost track. Are we at council comments or we're still at
Yes, sir.
reports?
Yes, sir.
Let me just say quickly, thank you, Mayor. Clearly, there's been a lot of conversation about race and in the past few days, and I wanted to express my pride in University City. Not that we get all these issues right. I have spoken about ongoing issues of equity that I see within University City, as has Councilman Smotherson, as have other of my colleagues. But the one thing I will say is many communities don't even try this thing called diversity at all. We know in this region, the stories of segregation are legion. The reality of segregation is tangible, both within the city of St. Louis and our surrounding areas. But in University City, we're at least trying. And we're falling down sometimes, but we're always getting back up. And we're always pushing towards that ideal, I think, of this country and of who we are as people. So I am, in these moments, while saddened that the events have shown a spotlight on this, I am proud to be in University City where we are trying to make it better. And I think in a number of ways, an example to this region, this state, and this country.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wanting to make comments, I'll be very brief. I think Mr. McMahon, I think almost took almost all of my comments. So I'm glad to know that we think a bit alike. I would like to thank Mr. Tiers once again for his engagement in our community, his continued efforts to make us a better place. I would also like to congratulate Alita Klein on her victory in the 2nd Ward. We look forward to swearing her in and to working with her. I had the pleasure of walking through the loop over the weekend, and it was very gratifying to see the kids, many kids out being supervised by their parents as they painted the buildings, people just simply dropping off supplies so that other folks could paint at a later point in time, or people giving cash donations to folks just to help pay for the expenses. So once again, it was a prideful moment. I'm glad that we did not need necessarily the boards to be up, but I'm glad that we had so many people thus far who wanted to make our city look a little bit better. I would encourage all of you and those watching to please come and visit our restaurants and our retail businesses, because the service is impeccable. Everyone is so grateful to see you, and it will help all of us if you will keep your social distance, wear your mask, but still go out and visit our restaurants and businesses. I think it's also a good time to sort of parallel on something my colleagues mentioned. We are fortunate at University City to really be a community that we owe a debt of gratitude to all those folks who came before us, who have created an atmosphere of being willing to listen, an atmosphere of people being able to protest, an atmosphere of people being able to disagree yet to talk things through. And I think the past couple of weeks have clearly shown that. I will say to all of our protesters, and I'm not sure that a lot of communities would say this, but I think for University City, we welcome protest. We always have. We ask that you be peaceful and respectful, but we really have always welcomed protest in University City. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of our community. To my neighbors, as I have been able to watch and participate in the marches, they have to watch my neighbors come out of their houses and start the march, to have them greet folks, to give bottles of water, absolutely incredible. And to our police force, I check with them each time I see the protesters come through. And I am so proud to watch the level of interaction between our police officers and the protesters. They are simply welcoming the protesters to our community. They're helping guide traffic. They're helping the protesters get through. They're helping cars to turn around. And I really have to tell you that I know this is a struggling time for everyone, but to watch the level of engagement between our citizens, our police officers, and our protesters has made me very proud to be a member of our University City community. So to all of you, thank you. I'm glad that you were able to join us this evening. And I would now welcome a motion to go into closed session according to Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, legal actions, cause of actions, or litigation involving a governmental body, and any confidential or privileged communication between that body and its representatives or attorneys. Is there such a motion? Motion made by Mr. Hale, seconded by Mr. Kusick. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Ms. Reese, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kusick.
Here.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clay.
Yes.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. Thank you very much. We will now go into closed session. To the members of the public, thank you very much. This meeting will now be concluded on the public session and move into closed. Thank you.